Hi, it's me, Khandie, which I kind of figured you probably already know if you're on the channel, but let's talk about why working for exposure is absolutely destroying the photographic industry, which a lot of us have spoken about and we know about this, but I'm going to do quite a deep dive and even pick out maybe some positives for it. But if I'll be honest, I am seeing it more and more. Maybe it's because of the financial climate or just because there are so many people willing to do it that it is being asked for more and more. In fact, one of the ones I just saw on a Facebook group that I'm in, it's always on Facebook, isn't it, was they were looking for someone to cover an entire festival for free, which was starting at 9 and finishing at 11 at night and hand over all the images. Now, I'm sorry, that should be paid. That's a whole lot of work and I think it should be. But I said I'd do some positives. I'm going to talk about, for those of you who might think, yeah, it's really bad, but do some deep dives into why it's so bad for the industry. And I'd love to hear your opinions on this because I feel like this is one of the ones that's very contentious for us and people talk about it a lot. And, you know, we go mad about people, but this is one I think in particular that has always been the bugbear in the photography, videography, general artistic scene. I once saw someone even asking someone to do a whole billboard for their festival for free as well. So that was a bit yuck, but let's go. So let's talk what exposure is. Essentially, working for exposure means where you will supply your photographic skills, video skills, in this term we're going to talk photographically, to a client, a person, in the hope that they will publicize you with some way, and that's the form of payment. It will be either they'll credit you or they'll share it with your name, but the idea is that's your form of payment. There's no money that changes hands. And it's a common argument people use to justify building a portfolio, to gain recognition, and essentially get future paid work. That's the argument. I'm going to suggest that that is not at all the case of what happened. So we're going to pick it apart. I will find some positives, but yeah, if you want to get involved in the comments, I will be there too. So this is kind of more of the videos I'm enjoying making. Rather than jump in and do the obvious negatives of this, I did say I would find some positives. I asked a lot of photographer friends, I asked on a couple of groups, and these are the ones that came up. So one of them is portfolio building for beginners. That's great if you are a beginner, not someone who's got a few shoots under their belt. I think it's very easy to be taken advantage of, but I want to keep this on the positive. So yes, you can potentially build a portfolio. I wouldn't necessarily say that every time for exposure shoot is going to be the best for your portfolio because you might not get the best models or the best vibe, the best look, but it has potential. There's also the networking and connections opportunity. Yes, you might network with other makeup artists, other models, other people in the industry. There is that, but I would also argue that you could do that with paid work as well. You're not going to sit there in silence, but again, I said I'd find some positives. You're also going to get experience with learning, and there's some opportunities there to learn. Again, if you're doing time for exposure, you're working for exposure, I would be a little concerned if I was a client where you were using it to train yourself up on, because, you know, I don't want someone who's never shot this doing this for my brand. But again, time for exposure, or working for exposure, should I say, often brings you clients who genuinely don't seem to be that invested in their imagery, because if they'd be wanting to pay for it to make sure they get the right example. But I'll come on to that more. It is also possible that you can test creative concepts, like a test shoot. So you get everyone together, and again, that builds your portfolio. But you know, you need to really make sure you've got the right people working for you, and that can be a little bit awkward. But it can allow you to work with an influencer, perhaps, or something that's a little bit more conceptual that you wouldn't normally do, and everyone's in it together. I get that. That is a great possibility. But let's go on to the negatives, because I think these are the ones that people should be focusing on the most. And this is why I think working for exposure is incredibly dangerous for our industry and all creative industries. The obvious one is that it hurts the value that photography is seen as. It devalues it in such a way because you can just say, well, it's not worth paying for because you'll do it for free. And so many people will happily jump on these opportunities. And that means the person who's hired them isn't essentially thinking, oh, I should pay for this. They're getting it for free. Therefore, there is no value for that imagery. And that's something that always concerns me, especially when you see someone saying, I've just launched this new brand. I'm hoping to work with a photographer on a collaborative base. Well, if you've launched a brand, a business, you should have money set aside in your business plan, your marketing plan, to pay for imagery, because imagery and videography are so significant if you want to make waves in the world. You need to have good imagery, good videography, good content to stand out. So the fact you're just going to rely on someone who's offering their work for free is a bit of a worrying practice for me, okay? The other thing is the fact is you're constantly working for free means you could eventually be incredibly busy, which sounds great, but you're being busy because you're free, not necessarily because you're good. And that kind of mentality and that amount of effort can lead to burnout. And that is a very serious thing. Once you've had burnout, honestly, it can take so long to recover from that. And I know some photographers who literally never came back to photography after being burnt out. They was like, I'm done. I just don't want to get involved. The other thing is when I've seen this before where somebody has put up saying, I'm looking for a photographer for this job. I've got a small budget, blah, blah. And someone's gone, I'll do it for free, because your ego to shoot is worth more than the value of your work. You are so wanting to shoot so you look like you've got people that you're willing to give your work away for free. And I just think you're undercutting professionals and you're devaluing yourself. I did talk about devaluing photography, but this is utterly devaluing yourself. And clients will always expect lower prices. They will always try and get cheaper. On the most part, there's a rare client who's like, whoa, no, that's my budget. I want to pay for that. But you are literally running into people who will happily take the lowest number because that's what they want, okay? The other thing is it creates a reputation in this industry that you are cheap or you are free. That is not anything you want attributed to your brand, your photography, your reputation. You just don't want it. It's all attached to you. You want to be known for being a good photographer. You want to be known for being a creative photographer, but cheap and free, it should never be one of those attributes you want linked to your name. It does not look good. Also, taking these free things impacts so heavily on future generations of photographers, because every time you do a job for free, you're telling that client, oh, that I shouldn't have to pay for that. I should expect there's someone for free. And that leads me so quickly on to the false promises with exposure. So many times you are told, oh, I've got this huge reach. I've got this. I'll make sure you get loads of work, and you get no work from it. And then you've done all this work, they've got some pretty images and you're just sat like that. You have nothing from it. You also get this, they always say, oh, there'll be paid future work. I don't know anyone who's ever got paid future work. If they have, please put it in the comments, and was it worthwhile? Because I remember back in my day, and I did do work for exposure, so I am going to say I'm one of those people. When I first started out, I did unpaid work. And this woman was had a fashion brand, and she promised me that she was going to give me this whole spread next time, and I would be paid. Do you know what? She offered me £100, and it was like, what? For 9 hours work? And I said, no. And then I said, no, that's not enough. That's not not all that time. And she went, well, that's what I'm doing. And then she ended up using a free photographer. And do you know what? I don't think she's ever paid for her photographers, because she can always convince somebody to do it for free. Basically, you are doing work for free so this woman can make money. You don't make any money, but she's making money off your images. She's making money hand over fist because she's doing so well. And that's a massive, that just annoys me so much. I think another thing we miss about is that photography should be seen as a skilled profession. It takes skill to be a good photographer. It takes skill to be an exceptional photographer. It takes skill to be a food photographer, exception to be a portrait photographer, headshots, all these things. It's a skill. And not to just talk about the absolute expense involved with having the equipment in the first place. It's just not great that you're basically saying, oh, anyone could do it because it's free. Like, it doesn't have, there's no exchange happening. Now, that's not to say if you're on a collab shoot and you want this certain look, go ahead if you want to. But when another business says, I haven't got a budget, will you do it? It should be a red flag to you, because it is a skilled labor job. It is skilled. There's no getting around that. There's also another thing that I never thought about previously until a friend who is actually an accountant brought it up to me, that you know that if you run a business and you deliberately take work for exposure, you could get yourself in a very sticky situation with HMRC. So essentially, HMRC has a requirement that, or expects businesses to operate with the intention of making a profit. So working consistently for free, making a loss and claiming it back on your taxes and all of that does bring up big red flags and could see you in a very awkward situation with HMRC, because they'll see your business more as a hobby and then your expenses do not tally up. And so making a loss big red flags essentially could cause you lots of issues. I never thought about that, and I don't know if you ever thought about that. I to be honest, I was like, whoa. And it means that you have to look at, well, my business therefore isn't sustainable. How do I justify my expenses and putting my expenses into my assessment, however you do it, for your tax return? I have to justify those expenses. But if you are constantly running at a loss because you aren't essentially making any money, I can see why HMRC would be like, no, you're not getting this money back for these expenses because you're deliberately not making a profit. I never thought about that. I just thought I'd chuck that one in. By the way, I hear this is a great time to like, follow and subscribe. They always tell me to chuck this in and I always forget. So, do your thing. So if somebody does ask you to work for exposure, maybe there's a way, and you can barter. I think like this is like alternatives, I guess you could call this. So perhaps there's a better exchange. For example, they perhaps do share more of your work and do like a blog post on you, or maybe they bring up you at a client networking event or invite you along for it. Maybe there's a bit more of a trade that could happen. I know that when I did a photo shoot with one customer, they gave me some sound equipment for free, like in exchange. That's how I did that. And you know what? Maybe there is discounts that are mutually benefit. Perhaps you get a discount on the clothing if you really like the brand. Maybe they could give you some of it, or, there's a little bit more way around it. I also think that if you're going to do portfolio building, it should be on a portfolio area that you want to build, not because a client has suggested it to you. I think it should be something that you want. So it should not be client led. It should be photography led. The photographer should choose what they want to put in their portfolio. Now, there are many ways in which you can say no to free work. No is a full sentence. And I think a lot of photographers need to remember that. No is a full sentence. Let's repeat that together. No is a full sentence. But I do think sometimes it's hard to say that. So I do want you to understand about setting boundaries for you and a client. If a client has always had free work off you, you're going to struggle to get them to pay for you. But it's okay saying, no, I'm not available that time, or I'm no longer doing unpaid work. Because if a client's coming back to you for that work, they know it has value. So they should be paying for you. And if they don't want to pay for you, I don't think that's a client you need to be working with. One of the excuses I hear that photographers will use about why they don't do they do it for exposure, or they do it super, super cheap, is because it's not their regular gig. They've got a full-time job elsewhere. And I'm like, so you work all week to get this time off to enjoy so you can buy your camera equipment, and then you want to give it away for nothing. You don't think your time off has any value? Well done. So essentially you are worthless. Your time is worthless. Your work is worthless, because you're essentially working your ass off to buy this equipment, to then just hand it to somebody else and be like, yeah, I did all that. So yeah, it doesn't give you anything. I know people in certain communities that I hang out with who they go, oh, I'm the photographer for this event. And I'll be like, great, I know you're not paid. And he's like, yeah, but they want me all the time because you're not paid. Never have I sort of gone, oh my God, this person's images are amazing. I hear them go, yeah, get him because he's free. I mean, that's horrible. That's horrible to hear. I remember being sat at an event, right? And I can't remember, I was somewhere in Northamptonshire, and I was sat around this table with some of the organisers, right? And they were saying, and someone was complaining about some of the photography that they'd had from the previous event. And I kept quiet, and they asked me my opinion on it. And I was like, I don't know, I'm only here as a spectator. I'm not about to trash another photographer. I thought it was very unprofessional to do that, but it's not. But do you know what I heard? Was they said they kept using him because he was free. He might not be good, but he gets the job done, and done is done. And I was like, what? That to me is horrible. And again, not because he was good, not because everyone loved his images, because he was free. I mean, wow. What a kick in the teeth. I'm glad he never found out, and I don't think he will from this video because it's too vague. But honestly, that kind of stuff, it angers me. And I just turned around and said, do you ever think you would get good stuff if you paid someone? And they're like, we just don't have it in the budget. I went, no, you chose not to put it in the budget because, and they looked at me and went, you made a conscious effort not to put it in your budget. Every business should have a budget for marketing, and marketing involves videography, content creation, photography. You've chosen not to put it in. And I was like, mic drop momently. I got told off, but I was like, nah, I'm sticking by that. So my final thoughts are, as you can probably guess, working for exposure is only good in the very, very extreme examples, such as you want to do a personal project, and it is just a personal project. It is something that you're doing for your personal portfolio. I don't think you should be working for anyone's business for free. I don't think you should be working for anyone's event for free. Sometimes say it was a charity event, no one's getting paid. The CEO is getting paid. I'm pretty sure the venue's getting paid. The bar staff are getting paid. Why can't I get paid? You need charities have a marketing budget. They should be. I know it's very controversial to say that. So if you don't agree with me, I'd love to hear why you don't agree with me in the comments. But So many of these charities I'm not the one giving back to charity. You are. You've created this ball and charged people tickets. I'm pretty sure everyone else is getting paid. I'm taking the photos to give to you. I know it makes me really heartless, but like you need those photos, you need those videos to promote, like there has to be a budget. I'm not saying like you have to pay my full fee, but there has to be, right? But again, because they know people do it for free, so many charities don't. And yet I work with very small charities sometimes and some very big ones, and all of them seem to pay. It's just every now and then there seems to be a charity event that seems to assume that you'll do it for free. So I'm just saying, careful where you do it. Be really mindful how easy it is to be taken advantage of. And remember, it's very hard to put a value on something once you've given it away for free. And you never want to be associated as a photographer who's book cured because they're free and they're cheap. Like, I don't want to be booked like that. So I'd love to have a discussion with you. Tell me what you think of it. Talk about your horror stories. I'd love to see horror stories. I have so many I could share with you. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next video.